here with you all today. As has been mentioned, there are groups like this across the country, people speaking out. So today across the nation, we have people like myself who aren't used to speaking in front of large crowds. But unfortunately, we've kind of been pushed into this type of a situation where we're just having to stand up and speak out. Yay! So, it would really be easy to just point to the people who are in power and, really just blame them for the situation that we're in today. Those who are trying to strip us from our religious freedoms and blame only them. But one has to ask, how did this happen? It happened because we let it happen. We're all culpable, some more than others, but we all have had a role to play in this current state of affairs. Most of us have no idea, as Beverly was speaking about, being stripped of complete religious freedom or freedom itself. Most of us have no idea what that really means, but our founders did. Our founding fathers were greatly influenced by the pastors of their time. There was a group that some of you may have heard of called the Black Robe Regiment, and this group was a group of pastors who spoke out boldly for freedom and against tyranny. And they were so hated by the British soldiers that they were actively hunted out and killed because they were so dangerous to the British cause. David Barton is a historian who talks a lot about the Black Robe Regiment, and he has told the story of a Reverend Wise, who in 1687 preached that taxation without representation is tyranny, and that the consent of the governed was the foundation of government. That sounds pretty familiar. Two of Reverend Wise's works were published and they were reprinted by leading patriots, including the Sons of Liberty. Our founders studied and distributed many of the leading pastors' works, and they were the foundation for our founding documents. Again, from David Barton, according to historian Benjamin Morris, in 1864, he said, "Some of the most glittering sentences in the Declaration of Independence are almost literal quotations from the 1772 reprinted essay of Reverend John Wise. It was used as a political textbook for the great struggle for freedom." So what does this mean for today? Well, recently some of you may have heard of Pulpit Freedom Sunday. On October 7th, there were about 1,500 pastors across the country who openly spoke out on politics and social issues of our day. They recorded their sermons, and then they sent them to the IRS. And what they're specifically trying to do is challenge the 1954 Johnson Amendment. This has been construed to limit the free speech of churches and other tax-exempt organizations like 501c3s. Well, this amendment is unconstitutional. And these priests and pastors, they want to have this case brought to court to prove that it's unconstitutional and free them from the shackles that the church has oftentimes imposed on itself from speaking out freely. So the movement grew to 1,500 pastors and priests, but 5 years ago there were 30 churches who did this. So I have to ask you though, does 1,500 churches sound like a lot in a nation that has over 350,000 Christian churches? It's not a lot. It's 0.004%. This year at Cleveland Right to Life's Bringing America Back to Life Symposium, we had Father Robert Sirico speak, and one of the things that he said has really stuck with me. And he used the phrase, if you drink the king's wine, you sing the king's tune. So my question for our clerical leaders today is, how long will we allow our churches to sit at the king's table and sing his tune? So whether we win this election or not, in the way that we want to see it turn out, whether Mitt Romney, who is just a man, wins or not, we are still going to be fighting this incrementalism of cultural and moral decay unless we actively fight it. So we must hold our clerical leaders responsible for speaking boldly about the issues of our time. We have to remember what Proverbs 29:18 said, which was that without a vision, the people perish. And so we need bold leaders like Charles Finney, and I'll leave you with this today. He was a leader of the Second Great Awakening in America. And what he said was, "Brethren, our preaching will bear its legitimate fruits. If immorality prevails in the land, the fault is ours in a great degree. If there is a decay of conscience, the pulpit is responsible for it. If the public press lacks moral discrimination, the pulpit is responsible for it. If the church is degenerate and worldly, the pulpit is responsible for it. If the world loses its interest in religion, the pulpit is responsible for it. If Satan rules in our halls of legislation, the pulpit is responsible for it. If our politics become so corrupt that the very foundations of our government are ready to fall away, the pulpit is responsible for it. Let us not ignore this fact, dear brethren, but let us lay it to heart and be thoroughly awake to our responsibility in respect to the morals of this nation." Thank you.